Hello and welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. I'm excited to have Andrew Crapuchettes with me today. He is the founder of RedBalloon.work, and he was canceled from the company that he started. So he'll talk about and tell us that story, and we will work on our classical tools of learning together and finish up with a little crypto. So let's hop in.
Classical Conversation Studios presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Today, my guest is Andrew Crapuchettes. I should have asked you how you pronounce your last name, just in case.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty darn close. I've heard worse, let's say that.
Great. The visionary behind RedBalloon. And RedBalloon attempts to solve the cancel culture movement in the American workplace by connecting like-minded employers with employees who seek jobs where they don't have to fear being discriminated against for their religious or personal beliefs. You would think that you wouldn't need a specific website to find that.
I know. It's America, but oh well.
Andrew, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Obviously, I'm excited about classical conversations for a lot of reasons. Not only are you awesome, but I think the whole movement and the work that's being done as someone who grew up as a homeschool kid when there wasn't really a lot of support, and now as a board member of ACCS, who I think of us as partner organizations, I'm obviously super excited about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we love ACCS and 100% behind private education and classical Christian education. And so if you can't be in a classical conversations community in ACCS schools, second best.
That's right. We can debate that later.
Yeah, when I go onto your podcast, you can flip it around.
Yeah, that'll be perfect.
So you were homeschooled, but right after high school, were you able to get into the tech world in Silicon Valley? Or tell me about how you got into technology.
Yeah, my dad was a tech guy all the way up. He was at Stanford University, helped them install some of their first computers there a very long time ago. He was like a punch card guy. And so we always had computers in the house. I wrote my first video game when I was 13 years old, and it was a math-based video game. It was mostly just trying to get out of doing math lessons. So I thought, fine, I'll write a game to do it for me. It was fun. So I'd been in that world for a long time. School was not necessarily my superpower. And so I really struggled with why am I paying money to have to do something? Anyway, long story, boring. So when I turned 16, I got a job at a tech company in the Bay Area where I grew up. And I started with shipping and receiving. And over 7 years, just, in the warehouse, over 7 years, I did 7 different jobs with them. And that ranged from shipping and receiving all the way up to I was the technical sales manager for the West Coast and Asia when I left at the ripe old age of 22. But it was a phenomenal experience to understand how the tech world worked. We got $32 million of funding from a VC while I was there. I turned 21 on an expense account. I played amazing rounds of golf in Tokyo, and we blew through all $32 million, strangely enough, but it sure was fun.
Well, what did you eventually go on to start your own business?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I moved up to Moscow, Idaho again when I was 22, which is now that I'm 44, so half my life ago. I moved up to Moscow, Idaho, partly because I want to go to the church up here and I wanted to just try something different. In growing up in the Bay Area, things were expensive and crowded, and liberal. So Idaho seemed like a good opportunity. And when you're 22, you can move somewhere. And if you don't like it, you can then move somewhere else. And I did like it. So I stayed here. But when I looked around, there weren't a lot of good jobs. And so I thought, well, if God's giving me skills and abilities, I should be using them to bless other people. So I met up with 2 economists here in Moscow, Idaho. And I'd been doing a lot of consulting work for other businesses around the country, but I really wanted to create jobs here in town. So these 2 economists had a small consulting firm in Moscow called Economic Modeling Specialists International, Emsi. And they were doing that part-time while teaching at the university. And so they let me turn into a real business. And our first goal as a business was 50 people earning over $50,000 a year, which doesn't make a lot of sense as a business because really you should have business goals that make a little more sense for growing revenue or money or any of those other things. We thought 50-50, if we could accomplish that, it would have a outsized impact on this small little town in North Idaho. Because once you give people the opportunity to support their families at that level, they can start to send their kids, they can take their kids out of the government school system. They can have their wife work at home if they want to. They can go on vacations. They can go out to dinner, right? And so how do you start to have and allow them to start to do different things with their lives? And so that was our original goal, 50-50. We were focused on economics because labor market data is actually also really fascinating to me, in which I could go down many, many rabbit holes when it goes into economics and labor market data, but it is the dismal science. So I will keep you all from that.
And probably extra depressing right now.
Yeah, correct.
Nice. And so were you able to reach those goals?
Absolutely. So God really blessed what we did. So Emsi, by the time that I left, which is about 9 months ago, I'd hired over 600 people. So well past those goals. We had grown to a many hundred, well, this year is probably going to be about $100 million SaaS business that has offices all over the world, which is pretty exciting. We also really focused on how do we bless the employees that are here, which we'll go into in just a little bit. I also was fortunate enough to start a number of other businesses. I started a company called Element Robot, which was a 3D printing business that we ended up selling off to Stryker, which is a large engineering firm. And then I also started Populi, or worked with some guys to start Populi, which is a student information system company used by a lot of colleges. And did a management buyout with them because I'm a huge fan of getting people with skin in the game. And so they bought the ownership of the company from me. And then Emsi, I ended up selling 4 different times. I know that sounds a lot like the guy who sells the bridge over and over again. Like, really? Are you allowed to do that? But I did, and learned a lot through that as well. The first sale was to a private equity firm out of Palo Alto who I'd had good connections with. And they were fantastic because it really was like an MBA for me. They taught me how to run the business, how to think about accounting, how to lead people. Then they ended up selling the business to Career Builder out of Chicago. That was also a good experience because at that time we were only working with colleges and universities, and Career Builder had a lot of large corporate clients. And so being able to expand our service and learn how they built a sales organization to build, at that time, Career Builder was a $700 million business, and really getting to work directly for the CEO, understanding how they think about things was great. We were with them for about 5 years, and then a national nonprofit out of Indianapolis, of all places, bought Emsi as a way to, and that's again another story for another day, but as a way to really help students understand what they're doing with their education and not just get a liberal arts education. And I know that sounds bad, but the thing is, a liberal arts education in the government school system is a tool for evil, because a lot of those psychology degrees or English majors, those are the people who are in the BLM riots. Mm-hmm. And so I think if we were trying to focus on trying to get more colleges and universities to be more vocational and less of that liberal arts, because if it's not Christian liberal arts, it's probably bad. Mm. So we focused on that quite a bit. And then most recently, Emsi was bought by KKR, at which point they decided that I was a little too conservative and a little too Christian for their board. And so I found myself delightfully unemployed, and ta-da, here I am, RedBalloon.
Yeah, so basically, in my understanding of the story, is RedBalloon is something that you created out of a need or an experience where you were fired for your beliefs, and you said, hey, I know tech, and I know this space a little bit, so let me throw up a website. Is that basically what happened?
That's kind of it, actually. So I was going to take a year off. I have a housing development I'm doing. I have a number of commercial buildings that I'm developing in Moscow and beyond. And I really was going to spend a year working on real estate, relaxing, maybe even playing a little bit of golf. But I feel like RedBalloon chose me. I didn't choose it. Friends like, hey, you should start a job board in Moscow because it'd be useful to have one. I'm like, okay, I'll do a Moscow only job board. And so I did. And I start getting these notes from people all over the country saying, hey, when is RedBalloon going to come to our area? And the answer was generally, it's not. It's a Moscow only job board. Please leave me alone. Mm-hmm. I was trying to be more polite than that, but it's hard for me because I'm not naturally polite. So And the reason it's called Red Balloon is because if you've ever been on a hot air balloon, it's a little bit terrifying and a lot bit fun, kind of like looking for a new job. And people are moving to red states or red regions of blue states because they're tired of the madness and they want some freedom. And so redballoon.work kind of came out of that. I spent about a month and a half digging in my heels thinking I will never be more than a Moscow, Idaho job board. But clearly God had more plans for me than I did. And so we finally gave up and said, fine, we'll be a national job board. And it has been extremely gratifying because of all the businesses I've run, I've never had a business where I get unsolicited thank you notes from perfect strangers every day, because Red Balloon is all about freedom. Every employer has to sign a pledge that said, if you're going to post a job here, you need to say that the Constitution actually matters and applies to everybody. And you're going to respect the freedom of your employees, including but not limited to, you may not require them to be vaccinated or do pronouns or whatever. And so that really was the thesis of Red Balloon. And we've since in the last 6 months seen 1,800 customers, businesses sign up, and over 700,000 job seekers who are looking for freedom. So there's a lot of Americans right now that, while freedom shouldn't be newsworthy in America, it is.
That's amazing. I know we signed up, and it was kind of fun to see the growth, and just excited to be able to reach people. We were indirectly part of the lawsuit for big businesses because we have over 100 employees. So, the federal government was going to try to mandate this stuff. And, I was just trying to figure out what the fine was going to be. Try to minimize that.
Yep.
But, it's great. So many people just they feel stuck because they've got bills they have to pay, and they don't either have an option or don't have an employer that respects their freedom and is willing to fight for it. So, yeah, what was that like, going kind of from obscurity to, I think I saw you on a different Fox News program every 5 minutes or something there during the.
Yeah, it felt like that. I was talking to the team when, especially when you're not planning on growing like that, it was supposed to be just a little hobby job. It kind of felt like this balloon was taking off, but we weren't in the basket. We were all holding on for dear life on the outside of the basket as we were going through various atmospheric levels. So I've been blessed to be on pushing 50 media interviews over the last 6 months. And this is where it's like, well, freedom should not be newsworthy in America. It should be something we can kind of, take for granted. But there it is. So I've been on everything from Glenn Beck's show to Fox and Friends to obviously this podcast. So all the big ones have been. So yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. At Emsi, you talked about blessing the customer, blessing the employee, and blessing the shareholders, kind of some of your tenets there. And now Red Balloon is free speech employment matchmaking. Tell me about what do you see differently? How do you run Red Balloon maybe differently than when you run Emsi, since you've been doing this for a lot longer now?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously a job is a really interesting and defining feature of a person, right? When you meet someone new, you ask them, hey, what do you do? Or hi, what do you do? But what you're doing is you're saying, what is your job? But it betrays the question, what do you do? Is a job is not a 9-to-5 hobby. It is an interesting defining feature of who you are. And so it is your vocation, right? And so if you want to bless the people around you, which you should, a job is a really interesting and powerful way to do that. So one of the things we did at Emsi is, while not everybody there was a Christian, I was an unapologetic conservative Christian. And I thought, okay, what are the things that we can do to show them the love of Christ and the beauty of the gospel through the way that we worked? And so that's where we kind of came up with these, okay, we need some central tenets on how we make decisions. Also, if you're running a business, there's a million decisions you need to make all the time. And if you don't have a rubric for making good decisions, then everyone is going to be decided kind of on an ad hoc basis, and you're reinventing the wheel constantly. And so this is where we landed on this: bless the customer, bless the employee, and bless the shareholder. Let me unpack those just a little bit. So bless the customer, we basically said, look, we want everybody who talks with an Emsi person to be better off because they had that conversation, even if they don't buy anything. And if you can do that, God has built the world in such a way that when you bless others, it's going to come right back around to you, and you're going to be blessed as well. So blessing customers made it, and what was interesting is I had a lot of customers who I would say did not share our worldview in the slightest, But when they came to our users conference, they would grab me. They're like, why do I love just hanging out with you people? Like I just like I'm happy in a way that I haven't been happy in a long time. I'm like, well, and a lot of them I'd say, so it's the gospel. Like you can't help it. And so that's the first one. Then bless the employees. So bless the customer, then bless the employees. We want the employees to be better people because they worked at the organization. Because most people aren't going to retire there. Clearly, I didn't. And most other people aren't either. And so I want everyone to be a better employee for their next employer because of the work that they did at Emsi. And so sometimes that means hard conversations. Sometimes that means, we're having fun together. But if you're, as an employer, focused on blessing your employees, you're going to have an opportunity to get the best work out of them, and you're going to be able to share the gospel in the way that you work. And then bless the shareholders. Basically, I understand authority and dominion, and we have shareholders. We want to bless them, but if we bless customers first and then employees, shareholders will always do very, very well out of the deal. As I've transitioned to RedBalloon, I'd say many of the customers for Emsi were universities or colleges who might not share the same worldview that I have, but I still wanted to be a blessing to them. It's been really fun to be what I'll say an unapologetic public conservative as part of RedBalloon. And as part of that, side note, we did launch a video game pronoun landmine, which has already made a couple people mad, but is useful.
I tried it. I could only compromise for about 60 seconds.
That's it. That's the problem is, it's basically tries to mimic the modern workplace and trying to avoid pronouns and hire the right people with the right skin color instead of, focusing on work. And so,
And what's that website again?
It is pronounlandmine.com. You can also go to redballoon.work, and there's a link at the top there. So it has been really, really fun to watch. We had over 1,000 people play it in the first hour that we launched it. And some people are like, wow, this is a little too close to reality, because we hear from people all the time. Like many of us who live in, a nice, comfortable Christian world have no idea how bad it is in some of these large corporations. And we hear from people as part of RedBalloon constantly who are, man, I just finished my 2-hour CRT training. And then my manager got up and said, man, I wish all those unvaccinated people would go to an island and die together. Or, hey, I just finished my DEI training and I was told if you want to get a promotion, you need to change your skin color, which clearly you can't do. It's a fairly toxic work environment in a lot of these large corporations. And so anytime we can do something to help poke fun at some of the stupidness and also give people an opportunity to know that they can find a job somewhere else, because it's hard to be brave if you don't know what your backup plan is. But if you know what your backup plan is and you know that you're in a position where if you lose your job because you speak the truth at work, you can get a job somewhere else on redballoon.work. It's a lot easier to be brave and take that moment to stand up.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know, that's one of the things, if you're quiet, everyone else just kind of goes along, and why we've personally pushed back on so many of these things from the start, because we saw the slippery slope. And of course, a lot of those things have played out. So when you were on the left coast or working for a major IT corporation, what was some of the things that you saw from other IT groups that necessarily didn't follow your worldview? Were they pressuring their employees to vote certain ways and embrace certain ideas?
Oh yeah, no, it was shocking, right? When if you're a West Coast CEO, you end up getting a lot of colleagues who are also running tech companies in Portland and Seattle and San Francisco. And I was getting emails a couple of years ago from their company email system as a customer of theirs saying, you need to vote for Joe Biden. This is the most important election ever. Or I was pressured a lot to make a statement on BLM or on Joe Biden and the election or on George Floyd or on any number of these things. And the pressure is amazing. And, Rob, what I think you know is we are the largest ideological group in America and the least likely to say anything. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem is it is easy to say liberal things and you're pressured to say liberal things. But then if you stand for something, the woke mob will definitely shout you down. The thing is, there are more of us than there are of them. We just need to stop being a wimp about it.
Well, I guess the MC didn't keep the bless the employee part after the new company bought you, except they blessed you with a new opportunity, right?
They did. As my wife said, you've been redeployed, because you've got something else you need to go do. But yeah, they did drop the bless part. And Emsi's still a great company, a lot of really great people there.
Sure.
They did hire a chief people officer pretty quickly.
So you started RedBalloon, for those who don't know, before the vaccine mandates. Is that accurate?
That's right. I started it literally 3 weeks before Joe Biden decided that we should do this mandate. And so Joe Biden ended up being my best sales rep and was a big part of the success of RedBalloon. So I'd like to big shout out to President Biden.
Yeah, I could say the same thing about the governors of Oregon and Washington and California. They've been wonderful for classical conversations over the last couple of years, and just we really appreciate all the hard work they're doing to wake people up and open the eyes of parents to what their children are actually learning.
What a blessing, though, that we have all these kids coming out of government schools, right? I heard upwards of 1 million kids in the state of California have left the government school system, whether it's private school or homeschool, and fantastic. And that is the huge silver lining on all the tyrannical stuff that's happened with COVID. Is COVID's been a great accelerator, and honestly, that is a huge positive thing in my mind, that all these kids are getting out of those schools. They're starting to get better education, because as Christians for a long time have had the most kids, but then we just hand them right over and let the woke people have them. And instead, let's keep them. Let's build them into warriors and go after this.
So if your wife or husbands are working for a company who's violating their values, then redballoon.org, right, is the place to go.
That's it. And we're adding new employers every day. And if you're an employer out there, I would argue that not only are you going to get access to the best employees by posting jobs on RedBalloon, but you're also going to be an encouragement to other Americans. As I said earlier, it's hard to be brave when you don't know what your backup plan is. But if you know that there's great employers that are eager to hire you, then it's a lot easier to speak the truth in love in your workplace, even if there are consequences, because you know it's the right thing to do. So if you're an employer, get your jobs on there, and it's actually going to be an encouragement to people, and hopefully you're going to hire some great people in the meantime.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know that's a good word for our families, because I know I've heard of moms crying about their husbands being forced to do certain things that violates their conscience, and them feeling stuck, and knowing that there's a way out, even now, that they can reach out to, and the fact that it's not just a publicity stunt, but literally hundreds of thousands of people are searching for jobs. Thousands of employers are looking for these individuals. Obviously, there's a crisis of finding people to work. So if there's ever a time to leave a toxic work culture and go to a place that is going to respect you, now is the time to do that. And hey, parents, this is another example of someone who's homeschooled and has grown up to successfully start a business and get fired from it after he had a financial exit. so so you never know what your kids are going to be accomplished when they homeschool. So
Absolutely. Well, Robert, thanks for having me. Always great to be on here. And yeah, my encouragement to everybody is do something great. Go out, find yourself a new job, start a business, look to bless other people by starting a business, growing a business, starting a new job. There's a huge opportunity. There's a lot of disruption happening in the world right now. And I always think disruption is an opportunity for something new. And so do something new and have fun.
thank you so much. God bless. Sometimes you see people on TV, and I'm sure that you may have heard of redballoon.org by now. But if you haven't, I hope that it has encouraged you. And it's always interesting to hear the background story of individuals who are working on just changing the world for good, for bringing the kingdom here on earth, and helping Christians and conservatives find workplaces that are respectful of their beliefs. And so the first core habit of grammar that I'd like to talk about is storytelling. and is just really happy to hear about how he got into the IT field at 16, working in a warehouse, and just worked through the organization until he was 22. So he, didn't go the college route. And while I went to college, I too started in the IT field at the ages of 16. And it was because of my homeschooling experience and not being stuck in a room, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that I was able to intern as an IT person. So that really resonated with me. In the five common topics of dialectic, let's talk about the tool of comparison, where we discover similarities first and then differences. And he talked about liberal arts degrees. And he said, if it's not Christian liberal arts, it's likely bad. And of course, we all are working on Christian education K through 12, but we often send our kids to programs that don't have that biblical worldview, and it is not necessarily helpful to the students in the long run. And I often ask Christian parents, you just spent 12 years sending your kid to Christian education. Why are you sending them to a secular college where they're going to try to undo all that work, all that sacrifice from the last 12 years? And we also look at the five common topics of dialectic and circumstances. He started RedBalloon.work as a local job board and really thought of it as a hobby as he was trying to figure out what to do next in his life. And he said he is now holding on to a balloon that's going straight into the air as it continues to grow. And I know he mentioned 700,000 jobs lookers in this episode, but they're over a million now. I just had a conversation with him last week, and we record these after we record the initial episode. So just a little insight there. And also in the five canons of rhetoric, we talk about memory. And he talked about being pressured by leftist CEOs, even using their own customer list to tell their customers to vote a certain way or act a certain way or react to news a certain way. And I know here at Classical Conversations, we let people know about like our feelings on things in different manners, but we don't use our lists in that way. And sometimes people get pushed back when we're doing personal stuff on our own social media or talking about different subjects. And I just know that the left is always pushing their narrative in ways that the right does not. And that's why we don't shy away for asking hard questions, but we also don't go to the same measures as some of these leftist companies do, using their list to encourage people to vote a specific way. And so I encourage everyone always to do their own research and get involved. And we're going to let you know about homeschoolers who are running for office. And, they tend to be on the Republican side. But if anyone knows of any Democrats who are homeschoolers running, we'd definitely let you know about those as well. Now let's practice our 15 tools of learning with a current event. And we're going to be talking about recession. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. And today we're going to be talking about demographics. And I'm reading a book, or rather, I'm listening to a book called The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zehan. He doesn't necessarily share our worldview from what I can tell, but he looks at demographics and geography to predict what's going to happen in the future. And in the book, he uses the 5 core habits, and he uses 2 of them very well, which is memory and storytelling. And he uses those to kind of hypothesize how geography and demographics have affected countries in the past, and then using those past results to forecast what potentially could happen in the future. And so I think it's a book that I'm really enjoying. I don't necessarily agree with everything he has to say, but one that I would recommend if you're concerned about not just the recession now, but what potentially could happen in the future. In the 5 common topics of dialectic, we want to compare. And part of what he does in his book is spending habits by age. And so if we think about a recession that's GDP's going down, and we know historically certain age groups spend more money than others. So Those who are in their 40s are, spending money on kids' clothing and houses and cars and these type of things, and have a much higher spending than maybe someone who is in retirement or someone just getting started out of college. And so when we look at, are we in a recession now, we would need to also look at, what are the spending habits by age and what is the age demographics going on in the United States. And of course, the baby boomers are retiring. So as they retire, that's a big portion of the populace. They're getting older. They're not needing to spend as much money in the economy. And number of millennials or Gen Zers having kids has decreased. So they're spending potentially less money. And then I would suggest all of you Google this or use your favorite search engine, DuckDuckGo or Bing, 2025 enrollment cliff. And you'll find out from 2008, when we had the last recession, there was a significant decrease in babies being born. And so in 2025, the number of students that are getting into potentially college is going to be going down significantly, and colleges are trying to figure out what to do. A number of them will most likely go bankrupt or have to close their doors just because there won't be enough college students. Well, what's that going to do to the employment for employing high schoolers? What's that going to do to employing college grads in 2029? So we can see that while we might be in a technical recession right now, what are we getting set up for in the future? And then in the 5 common topics of dialectic, another one we want to look at is relationship. And so we might look at China, who has a one-child policy, and they've made it so that there are significantly more men in China than women, like hundreds of millions of more, I believe. Right now, China is at almost peak numbers as far as the number of Chinese in the world are, and they're expected to potentially drop in half. Anywhere between like 2050 and 2070, depending which people you want to listen to. So what will happen if there are fewer people? There will be fewer people to purchase. There will be fewer people to work in manufacturing. There will be fewer people to repopulate the culture as well. And so you can see that the GDP for China might be high and reaching a peak now, but in the future, the demographic cliff that they're going to be going off of is going to be disastrous. So we can use that as a warning here for the United States. And in the 5 canons of rhetoric, we talk about style and the choosing of the best way to present thoughts. And I think for us as Christians and classicalists, of course, we want to go back to the Bible. And we want to make sure that we're shoring up our own economy, that we're making sure that our family personally is building up our GDP, building up our skill set to be able to really attack and tackle whatever the future holds for us. And so I think things that we can do is have babies, homeschool them, make sure they are interning in high school or starting their own small business. Teach them to understand right from wrong and be able to recognize that. And so as Christian classicalists, we need to be a rebel in this ever-changing demographics in order to shore up our own house so that these recessions, either now or in the future, don't affect us, and we're able to love our neighbor well because our house is in order. I want to take a quick minute to tell you about Actors Bible, a web-based app that retells the narrative of the scripture through dramatic scenes your family can reenact. Using your desktop, tablet, or smartphone, you can select a teleprompter script of a Bible story for you and your family to act out so you can learn God's Word in a fun and interactive way. And even better, I've got a discount for you. You can go to actors.bible/rhetoric for a 15% discount for life. Now back to the show.
Welcome to another episode of Classical Crypto with Will. Today we're covering an actual current event happening right here in the end of Q3 of this year. It's the Ethereum 2.0 merge. We've covered Ethereum in previous episodes, but a quick review. Ethereum is currently the second largest cryptocurrency on the market. As a technology, a significant portion of Web3 applications, softwares, and NFT platforms run on Ethereum's blockchain. It was founded in August 2014 by Vitalik Buterin. Ethereum, or ETH1 as many refer to it, as a blockchain can sustain up to 15 transactions per second. Based upon millions of users, millions more Ethereum is looking to onboard, and the thousands of decentralized applications built on Ethereum, they are looking toward this merge for sustainability. Ethereum 2.0 has three main goals. Goal number 1, increase Ethereum's scalability. Goal 2, make Ethereum more secure. And goal 3, enhance Ethereum's market sustainability. Now, in classical crypto, I have a fun but tough job. You can ask me, Will, why should I care about crypto? Why should I care about Ethereum? Why should I care about this industry? Well, in my opinion, you should care for a variety of reasons. Number 1, globally, we're moving towards a digital money, a digital currency. Money is value. Money measures inputs and outputs and affects everything. That's one reason. Reason 2, crypto is tied into software and platforms, and soon the internet, in my opinion, will run on blockchain technology. They're already trying to figure out how they can merge our internet, the World Wide Web, with the blockchain and build on top of it. So in my opinion, if you care about money, if you care about the internet, some of these principles might be interesting to you. Anyways, back to this merge. Many large players in the crypto space are calling this merge the largest event in crypto history. A successful merge could be the catalyst to a very secure blockchain that could be considered for many national and global endeavors. Let's break down this merge. Scalability. Currently, Ethereum can support 15 transactions per second. As I previously mentioned, this becomes a major limiting factor when trying to onboard millions of new users, applications, platforms, all of that. Because of this bottleneck, Ethereum currently charges gas fees. The higher the fee paid, the faster your transaction is processed. Ethereum's scalability team has claimed to increase 15 transactions per second to over 1,000 transactions per second. This is a dramatic increase. Security. Ethereum's security teams claim to have made major breakthroughs in coded security. Your decentralized network is only as strong as your technology. I'm not a coder. I don't understand the inner workings and improvements, but there seems to be many, including an anti-51% attack plan, which would protect the network from one person or one large entity from buying 50% of the network and causing problems. Number 3, sustainability. Currently, ETH1 runs on a concept called proof of work. Proof of work requires a considerable amount of computing power and energy. Ethereum 2.0 aims to make Ethereum better for the environment by replacing energy-intensive proof of work with proof of stake. Proof of work, which is currently ETH1, requires a substantial amount of computing power and energy to validate Ethereum transactions around the world. Without electricity, ETH1 doesn't work. Proof of stake also has a mechanism for validating transactions with a dramatic reduction of energy. I hope today's episode of Classical Crypto was somewhat interesting and gives you a glimpse into the future of technology. Will the internet live on Ethereum in the future? No one knows, but the concepts and the issues being solved here are starting to illuminate a roadmap of what the World Wide Web could become.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to check out previous episodes and let a friend know. And we're excited about the changes we'll have in the new year. We'll be going to once a week. So until then, join us every other Wednesday for a new episode.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.